to ensure that, we get to have some values economically, of course, from some of those particular activities that we get to do on a daily basis. And this goes to now accumulate it being something that is actually done nationally. So, of course, at a particular time, I'm joined by an economist, Mr. Kyovench Sanga, to just get to look at some of the economic things that have happened during the week, that we can get some insights from him so that we get more understanding. Good morning to Mr. Sanga. Thank you so much for coming through. It's always a pleasure to interact with you.
Good morning, Tracy. Good morning, dear viewers.
First of all, let's talk about the deadly storm that we're still waiting, because we were told that Saturday and Sunday it can quite get intense. We're seeing the last time that it's quite heavy, southern province as well as western province. It was unexpected. We have to take note. We've seen the kind of devastation done to other countries like Mozambique, and lives, of course, have been lost. But looking at it from the economic point of view, Mr. Sanga, does this really have any impact on our economy? It could be at provincial level or even at national level. We were facing not so long ago with a dry spell. We saw our farmers already complaining, but now it's issues of having late rains. Late rains, now we're having floods.
Well, it's quite devastating, in that we're not anticipating, as you have said. And if you look at even just the whole narrative, it is something that is worrying, because if you look at the plans for the budgetary allocation of most of the resources, we have planned to say that we're going to channel money into A, B, or C items or agenda in terms of developmental aspects. But if we start now channeling some of them resources, financial resources, to actually mitigate some of this impact, it will actually create a very different display on the budgetary structure. And not only that, also, if you look at even just the way we have actually been anticipating, obviously we know that we've got low precipitation in terms of rain pattern. And then we have this situation where now our crops and few other things that we are anticipating to get from harvest also get to be distorted. So in that case, now it brings a different aspect altogether. So it's a devastating sort of composition, which will actually disorganize our economic outview for the provinces that are affected, like southern province as well as northwestern or western provinces.
Is there a way that you can actually come out stronger from all this that is happening?
Well, these are what I would say, they are beyond our human capacity. If maybe I may borrow some terms from people that are using contract or legal frame, it's a force majeure, because anything that is an act of God, it's something that's very difficult for us to control. And it just calls for us to collaborate and see how we can map up with the strategic stakeholders that can actually come forward on the board and see how best we can mitigate some of the impact that will be caused, especially on the humanity side of things. I think it calls for us to just look at how best can we serve the impact that is coming from there. Yeah.
So, meaning nothing that can be done proactively in the agriculture sector, because we're talking about labor, if guest lives are lost, we're talking about livestock and crops, nothing proactive that can still be done to try and mitigate what it can do in the agriculture sector.
Well, I like the proactiveness of the GMMU, which actually Dr. Poren has actually taken, an aggressive stance. So I think the idea of being proactive and determined to mitigate some of this impact, it's something that has actually been a welcomed idea. Okay. And considering the way the government has made a response to this, I think it calls for an appraisal on their side. Obviously, when you look at the loss of labor and a few other compounding factors, I think it calls for us to prepare ourselves as well. And it tells to say that even our meteorological department now is doing a correct job, and we need to look at that as well to enhance even the future years, so that we see how best we can work out even from the environmental aspect of it as well.
On a humanistic point of view, how does this get to affect individual household?
Obviously, you know that there will be loss of household goods and shelter, a few other related issues. So it's quite a drain on the human part of social aspect. And also, even when you look at the nation as well, because the nation is now responding to that, meaning that some of the money that we are supposed to channel to some other productive part of the budget will be channeled to social issues in terms of arresting those cases. So I think it comes out to a point where we say that there will be a loss of financial resources at different levels, even at level of government, level at individual level, family level. So it has a different layer of loss in this case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, away from the unfortunate reality and disaster that we're in right now, or anticipating, Monday was an exciting day because finally schools were open. We finally get to see some of those little ones getting enrolled into school, those going at grade to grade 8 as well as grade 10. But this time around, something different because we are enjoying the free education policy that, of course, the UPA and in the New Dawn government promised finally being a reality. But, in as much as they've removed the cost from the parents at household level, government has now taken the burden to ensure that they keep financing schools via the, the grants that they are giving to the schools. How does this really have an effect on the economy? I want a general perspective to start with. Is it something, first of all, that you think with our current economic situation, Zambia can maintain? And how does this get to benefit us in the long run, if at all there are benefits?
Well, to begin with, I think it's a light move because obviously when you look at the economic value of education, it goes beyond certain statements that maybe can even come from a political angle. If you look at it in the level where we are trying to stimulate and steer the economic aspect in terms of growth, if we have a well-informed decisions that are coming from policies and also that are coming from human capacities that we are building from the education circles, I think it calls for a point where to say that once we develop a robust knowledge economy in terms of taking ourselves to be more knowledgeable on our production and other related aspects, it gives us a different shell together to grow our economy. So once we build a structured economy with education, I think it goes a long way. And the impact is that once we go to a point where we have much of the educated people around in the corridors of power, making good quality policies that will be able to trigger socio-economic development, I think that is more of the gain in itself. So I think we need to look at it in a very different way. Obviously, when you make some comparison to say, we flow the subsidies on fuel compared to throwing the subsidies on education. I think if you look at the two, the subsidies going on education, it's more of the productive subsidy compared to the subsidies on fuel. So the narrative is that
how productive it is, because we are looking at somebody who started grade 1 this week and they have 12 days for them to finish. 12 years for them to finish up to.
It's coming from the background where if we, like in your case, obviously for you to find yourself working as a media personnel or media personality here, it's out of education and you have been productive. So it's from that basis, the long-term benefits may come to fruition, like the way you are able to understand certain things, you're able to interact, you're able to, whatever policies that are there, you are able to transmit the policies to the general masses. So it's that background which I'm trying to build myself, getting to explain this. But if you look at the fuel aspect in terms of subsidies, it basically used to benefit the rich, profile. So the demographic dividends of people that were benefiting so much was the people that came from well-to-do, entities, like the mines and few others. So if we are looking at education, it goes down to every household in this nation.
But is it something that you think is sustainable? Because previously we had it free up to primary, and then could secondary, they would pay a 200 kwacha. But is this something that we completely are done, even with the 200 kwacha? Government schools are expecting to be having these compensatory grants coming through. Schools are expecting government to give them grants, for termly to just, finance their daily activities, their expenditure.
Well,
we're also putting in place issues of doing, government is also paying the teachers now.
Yes, it could be sustainable if the economy is well functioned. Okay. If we reach a point where our economy starts, working out very well, the fundamentals are put in light shape. Obviously, when you look at the different pieces that we have witnessed in the economy, and according to even the plans that have actually been put forward in this year, where we've got an expansionary budget and few other pieces that are there as moving parts, I think it is something that can stand a good test of time. Okay. Yes. Okay. It all depends with the way the economy is going to function. Okay. And obviously, as I mentioned, once we have a productive society, this productive society that are coming from education or from the exposure of these subsidies that the government has put in place, they will be productive, and the economy will continue to be like that.
Oh, great. Yes. Now, away from education, Mr. Tsanga, let's talk about what you just mentioned. You touched issues to do with the Energy Regulation Board when you talk about the petroleum products that are going to be reviewed every after 30 days, a month or so. That means that we expect prices probably to change or to remain constant, depending on what decision that the ERB comes up with. And of course, there's been some outcry, in the different stakeholders, the general public, indicating that how then can we have a stable economy when one of the key factors of production is unstable? Make us first understand really exactly the whole environment. First of all, we had petroleum prices, no subsidies. So prices of transportation go up, as a result of the fuel prices that was also adjusted. Now this particular decision that has come through from the board, what does this mean for the economy really? Is it really going to have that much to create an instability in the economy?
Yes, there will be instability as one of the inevitable factor to consider. Obviously, when you look at the petroleum, commodity in its entirety, it is something that is actually an integrator in different, sectors of the economy. Petroleum plays a pivotal part in whatever we're trying to do. Believe it, you might have been coming from home. Definitely you couldn't have walked all the way from your place. Yeah, so even whatever you're trying to do or wherever you want to do anything, be it in town, wherever you want to go, you have to use petroleum to get there. So if petrol or rather fuel becomes an expensive commodity by way of subjecting to monthly review, but obviously that is what is actually being translated in this case. Because what is happening right now is that the procurement of fuel has always been linked direct to the exchange rate. So you see, we have a small overheating effect in the exchange rate as we speak right this moment. Every day we are losing a nominal value, meaning that even when it comes to the other time when we'll be able to review next month or the other month, we'll have an effect on the petroleum. So that in itself has given us now an unpredictability in terms of investment climate, and it's going to affect our aggregate demand, in that it's also going to bring forth now distortion of prices in the market. Yes.
And what does the distortion, when you have prices that are unstable, distortion in the prices, what does that do really?
It now brings the issue of inflation. You are fighting inflation, then it becomes a very difficult situation for you to fight inflation. Because basically the inflation is rooted from the exchange rate, and fuel also linked to the exchange rate. So these are going to be a very difficult. It's a complex matters.
Could it mean that we can have our inflation could reach a level that we can't really control it?
Well, in this case, we have been fighting it going down, and again also, even if there might be some other moving parts in the economy, with this case of fuel as well as the exchange rate, we are going to find ourselves not fighting the way we have been fighting inflation, and even going toward the forecast horizon, it's not going to reach there, because obviously when you look at these two components, they're not going to drive inflation going toward our forecast.
Could it something that could
target.
make maybe some, investors that were planning to come into the country, setting up plants and companies, maybe think twice?
Yes, it works. As I mentioned, it's going to bring forth a distortion in the aggregate demand, meaning that whatever is happening in the economy, we will find it very difficult for us to bring the sense of predictability when it comes to investment climate.
Yes, because I'm aware that investors, they want to be in a place that is stable, and also you're able to predict at least.
Yes. So that brings a different shape altogether. It's something that cannot even work out for one who's planning a longer term. Because obviously when you look at even just planning petty cash at a company level, micro level,
you look at fuel prices,
it becomes difficult, because how do you plan? If you plan for February to say, okay, our monthly cost center for fuel is so much, then in March it goes up. So it becomes difficult for us to work out like that. Even from the business perspective, it's something that's very difficult. And
so with that, because it's like we're putting a lot at stake here, that's what I'm getting from you. What would you want to be the quick remedies that the ERB can actually put in place?
The previous model, where they're using 3 months procurement cycle, it's actually the very best one. Obviously, when you look at even the security of supply, was also a very good factor. But in this case now, we are also going to be worried with the security of supply. For how long can we have the stock to sustain the economy? We are going to have a situation where sometimes we'll be running out of fuel, and it becomes a difficult situation for us to control our economic fundamentals.
Okay. A little bit on that. Let's talk about the small businesses in regards to this particular decision by the ARB. Are there any alternatives that you might maybe want to advise them to take, as maybe fuel becomes maybe something like an expensive commodity, especially now that it is unpredictable, looking at its purchasing power? Any alternatives that they might want to take on?
Well, obviously, there has been some tax rebates in most of the energy gadgets, more especially from the renewable energy side of things. But that does not also substantiate so much to actually mitigate the basic need of fuel, because obviously when you look at fuel, it becomes a very difficult situation for us to predict in the environment, the business environment, and coupled with even the impending increase of electricity bills at some point.
Yeah,
so
that's also coming.
That also puts different shape altogether. And worse off, we are looking at an expansionary budget which the new government has put in place. So if the economic fronts are faced with these challenges, it becomes difficult for us to trigger economic growth or development in the nation.
Okay, great. Yeah. We saw yesterday coming through from Stats talking about issues to do with inflation, and of course, if I can read something, of course, coming through from the Lusaka Times, the annual inflation rate of the month of January 2022 has slowed to 15.1% from 16.4% recorded in December 2021. The decrease of 1.3 percentage points, which has been recorded in this month, means that on average, the prices of goods and services increased by 15.1% between January 2021 and January 2022. Zamstat's interim statistician, General Mulenga Musepa, has attributed the slowdown in annual inflation to favorable price movements in food items. Mr. Musepa has disclosed that Lusaka contributed the highest at 4.6 percentage points to the overall inflation rate of 15.1%, following by Copperbelt contributing 3.7 percentage points, while Northwestern and Western provinces had the lowest contributions of 0.4 and 0.3 percentage points respectively. And Mr. says the monthly food inflation rate for January 2022 was recorded at 3.1%, an increase of 2.4 percentage points from 0.7% in December 2021. He has attributed the outturn of an increase in food inflation of items such as cereals, meats, fish, vegetables, dried beans, sugar, as well as cooking oil. What does this mean?
Well,
in simple terms,
it means now we are standing on a solid footing. You are just basically coming from, if you remember last year, around third quarter of the year, we posted about 3.5% growth on the GDP, meaning that the trajectory has continued going that route, and we've seen the inflation, climbing down, meaning that some of the fundamentals have started working perfectly. One of which maybe is prominent and key.
At that particular time, I think it was also mentioned that what was happening then was not something sustainable, right?
Yes, when you look at the economic cycle that happened last year, during the first and second quarter, we had a very terrible turbulence. And starting from third of September, 3rd of 2021, we had a very good, stable movement in terms of even the forex market, even the other, key sectors of the economy were performing very well. And the top part of it, that even the ITC went up, transportation, a lot of things that started now, putting in place, and the complex of all these sectors were performing very well. And it's from that background. And much to this also, the central bank, when they came up with the surging of an MPR to about 9%, to cushion the impact that we are recording from the inflation. Because obviously, when you look at the fundamentals that were also performing last year, we are looking at one, the kwacha was at 20, almost close to 24. Then inflation also was about almost close to 26. So these things were going the parallel direction together. So to curb this, it had to take some bit of heavy lifting from the policy rate, as well as even just some other moderating factors that were also put in place. So the policy medicine that the central bank came in by increasing the monetary policy rate has started working out both on the interbank market as well as on the inflation. And obviously, the inflation has been the biggest target that we are looking at now. Because obviously, when you look at inflation has been coming down with a very quick speed. Much of what we actually see that in November, we saw it accelerating faster, The way it actually made that speed, it's the same way it happened in 2016, that is 2016 November. So you can see how this is moving. So from that now, we are able to see that because there is a moderate decrease of value with the kwacha, and also there is also the ISC instrument, which was also passed on at budget and pronunciation by the Minister of Finance, where they talked about the chicks not to be exported. So that also really has come to this level, because obviously we are trying to supply the market in the region in terms of export. So having now the chickens and few other meat products coming down, it's what is also yielding to this. But much of what is happening in this moment is the issue to do with the exchange rate. Because of that moderate movement, it has now caused the inflation to be going down. One of the biggest culprits in the Zambian case, it's the exchange rate. That's why we find inflation. So the moment you see the exchange rate moving faster, then you expect the inflation also to start moving. But since it's moving slowly, that's the reason why we are having these effects. But the worry part, which I am also thinking would be a case that we should look at, it's the fuel issue. The fuel could actually bring or could fight against the inflation, because if we have a situation where we are changing prices on a monthly basis, then the inflation becomes very difficult for us to fight.
Beginning the year with such kind of things happening economically, and of course other things that we may not have mentioned, plus not taking away unforeseen natural things. We're still dealing with COVID-19. Now we're talking about having this particular tropical storm that we're dealing with some countries in the southern part of the continent. How does your own understanding, your own perspective on the 2022 economic outlook, how does it look like? Are we going to manage to be able to pull through some of these particular disturbances that are coming through? And also, we cannot take away on how much we are selling our copper as well, being still the biggest exporter that we have.
Okay.
How, from your own perspective?
Well, it's good that Zambia has been given this natural resource called copper, and the copper is at a period where it is in super cycle. So obviously we are looking at issues to do with electric cars and all these other things, and there's a growing demand for it. Good part that even when you look at the performance level in terms of the international market, it has maintained. Though there has been some bit of fluctuation here and there, but it's minimal compared to the way it has always been happening. And if you also even just look at the mineral royalties that the government had pronounced to slap on the mining industry, it is a good factor because obviously we are going to have liquidity, quicker money to come into the economy, and looking at the current demand that is prevailing right now. Then coming to the economic prospect for the year, we seem to have a good, substantial stance, because obviously when you look at the way the economy is moving, one of the biggest factors is that we have a situation where our government system has now stabilized in terms of political risk, and a few other things that are also put in place. And much of what also we are able to see that the IMF has also signed, or rather signaled to say they're going to give us 1.4 billion, which is going to help out, stabilize some of these cooling effects, of which we know that we've got some obligations that we need to make in terms of repayment and those sort of things in that case. So what I would say that the economy looks brilliant, and it's quite ambitious for us to see that some of the things that we have actually been looking forward to witness are going to actually pass through. Obviously, we are also going to have a mixture of challenges. The growth cannot come without a lot of challenges. So we've got some parts which are basically going to do some offsetting effect, and others are going to actually trigger certain movements. So what we are going to see that quite okay, there are quite some other challenges that we are not going to mitigate them, and others are going to also work to our own advantage. So it's a mixture of different cases that we can look at in this case. But by and large, we have got a lot of potential for us to trigger growth in this year. And
probably begin the year 2023 on a better trajectory.
Sure, yes.
Pasanga, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure for us to be able to interact on these economic matters, because every day we get to wake up, engage in economic activities for us to be able to sustain ourselves. Thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you. It's always my pleasure.
So, of course, that was our last conversation for the day. We're having an interaction with economist Kelvin Chisanga, just looking at the overview of this week when we look at the economic front, and of course, just discussing matters that are very cardinal as we get look at some of the key players when you look at the Zambian economy. Talk about the fuel pump prices, issues to do with inflation, and some of the subsidies now, like we've seen, that are being thrown in the education sector. Thank you so much for being a part of the early bird, just like every other single day. Of course, Monday to Friday it is. We'll get to bring to you nothing but the very best of TV, breakfast TV, that is. My name is Tracy, and on behalf of the entire production crew, we wish you a safe week. Please be safe. We want to be able to start next Monday with you again. And of course, get to kickstart the day just like every other single day. We get to it right here on Millennium TV. We wish you a lovely weekend. And please remember to be safe at all times. And of course, keep locked right here on Millennium TV. Good morning to you.